Hello and welcome to the Lulu Blue Studio. If you are new here, my name is Luisa and on this channel we like to paint mainly botanical subjects in watercolor. Today we are going to paint this loose style watercolor flower composition. We are going to use mainly 3 different types of brushes. We are going to learn why we are using these brushes and how to use them. Also, we are going to practice the wet on wet technique. Are you ready? Let's start painting now. We start painting these loose style flowers, mixing on your color palette your favorite colors. In my case, I mix a little bit of transparent orange, Quinacridone Magenta and brilliant Ochre rose. I also add a little bit of white gouache to create a color that is a little bit more opaque. To create these flowers, I use a filbert brush. In my case, this is a filbert brush from the brand Da Vinci in size 10. It's called Fit Synthetics, and if you're interested, I link it in the description down below. I like to use this type of brush to create these petals because I can take advantage of the shape of this brush to create these petals and also of the side of this brush to create some brush strokes that are a little bit more defined. My approach to create these type of flowers is to start from light color values. It means that you mix on your color palette a little bit of pink or a little bit of orange and you add a little bit of water on your brush in order to remove the high concentration of pigment, and you start to create the base of these flowers. Then, when the first layer is still wet, I like to use the side of this brush to add some more concentrated brush strokes just in some areas of these petals. And that's what I'm doing in this moment. I first create the first layer of these petals, of these flowers, in a very light color value. Sometimes it's so light that you almost don't see it. Then I take my brush and I add some more concentrated brush strokes, either in pink or orange. Just pick the colors that you like to mix the most. To create the petals of these flowers, the shape of this filbert brush is just perfect. I really think that with adding just a little bit of pressure to your paper, you can create exactly this type of petals that can be similar, let's say, to peonies. This is a loose style floral composition, therefore we are not too picky and we are not focusing too much on the shape of these flowers. This can be any flower that you prefer, and you can use any type of color that is of your choice and that you have available. Just try to have fun and take advantage of the shape of your brush to create the shape of these flowers. When the first layer is still wet, you can add more concentrated brush strokes. In this case, I'm adding some Quinacridone Magenta, and you can admire how the colors are going to blend directly onto the paper while you are painting. When you are quite satisfied with the overall amount of flowers you have created, you can change your brush. In this case, I'm using my round brush from Princeton in size 12, and I mix on my color palette a little bit of Viridian color with the Payne's gray and just a little bit of white gouache to create this dark type of green to create the stems of these flowers. This whole flower composition is created with flowers in the center part of this page. And now I'm gonna start to add leaves that are in this light green color, but leaves just in areas that are sort of framing the flowers that are in the middle. Painting these leaves, you can, in this case, take advantage of the shape of your thick round brush. In this case, I add some pressure to the brush and I create some leaves in a sort of round shape. Also in this case, the very first layer of these leaves is quite light in color value. It means that I'm not using a concentrated amount of pigment. But then I start to add more concentrated brush strokes when the first layer is still wet, with a darker and more concentrated brush strokes from a color mixture that is very similar to the base. So this is my favorite approach when I paint loose style flower compositions in this style. My recommendation is that you can, both for flowers and leaves, start to paint your elements from light color values, and then you can always start to add more and darker brush strokes, even in different colors if you want, while the first layer is still wet in a second moment. In this loose style flower composition, I really want the flowers in the center to really pop from this whole composition, and therefore, for this reason, I have decided to create this color mixture with a little bit of green, Viridian green, with some Payne's gray. This type of gray is quite dark, but I really think that if you start to add a few brush strokes with a higher concentration of this dark gray into your first layer of the leaves, the dark color is going to blend perfectly onto your page and is going to create some dark type of leaves that are going to enhance the light colors of the flowers in the middle. You can use the tip of your brush to create these stems, but also use just the tip of your brush to add these darker elements while the first layer is still wet onto your leaves. We are using this approach because adding these darker brush strokes will also add some contrasting areas that are really going to create a better composition overall. In fact, one of my tips for you when you are creating loose style flower compositions is always to remember to have some areas that are darker than others, because you are going to create different levels in your flower composition at which your observer is going to look at, and you're going to create a flower composition that is going to be surely more interesting. With this same brush, I've decided to add some yellow elements, in this case secondary flowers. I like to add secondary flowers to frame the main flowers and also to create, in my opinion, a composition that is a little bit more complete. To do this, these secondary flowers are just small in size, and I've picked my lemon yellow because I really like how this type of yellow is going along with the colors that I've used for the flowers and for the leaves. Then, with my round brush in size 6 from Silver Black Velvet, I start to add some stems into these yellow flowers with a little bit of yellow ochre. I really like to use this color combination, and I like to add these brush strokes with yellow ochre because the yellow is still wet, the lemon yellow is still wet, and therefore we can allow the yellow ochre and lemon yellow to really blend onto the paper. I really like how all of these colors are blending onto the paper while I'm painting. And at this point, with this same brush, because this brush is the one with the thinnest tip that I own, I started to create the center of these flowers. Since I don't want to add many more colors to this flower composition, I add the center of these flowers in Payne's gray, the same gray that I've used to blend into the Viridian to create the leaves. To create the center of these flowers, I stay a little bit loose, and so I don't create center parts of the flowers that are just perfect in round shape. I leave some white spaces, and I just do not add too much pressure onto the tip of my brush to create these fine lines and small round elements. I hope this type of tutorial is interesting for you and it helps you to improve your watercolor skills. Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know which type of colors you mixed to create these flowers and the leaves. I'm really curious. I hope to see you on my next tutorial.